on the spectacular west coast of Florida, in one of the nation's fastest growing urban areas, you'll find one of the world's most unusual places, an unpredictable collection of delights called Busch Gardens. Here's a place that isn't one place, but several. A collection of lands within a land that combines good times galore with ways to meet wildlife face to face. It's a place where fun sits side by side with some of the world's most beautiful sights. A showcase of nature, designed and built by people. With so much to see and do here, it's no wonder that millions of guests visit Busch Gardens each year. What is a wonder is the park itself, a combination of wild times and wildlife that's like no place else on Earth. Among the thousands of animals that call this park home are many whose wildlife homes no longer support them. Like zoos around the world, Busch Gardens is providing endangered species with a new chance for survival. Here, the permanent residents find themselves in a climate that's similar to that of their native lands.
Busch Gardens is absolutely unique. We have this incredible collection of animals in a situation that most zoos don't. It allows people an appreciation, not really of the wild, because there's a level at which the wild doesn't exist anymore, but it allows people an appreciation of how things should be, and perhaps we can all work towards that should be. And that's what I hope Busch Gardens gives everyone who comes to visit us. A lot of people come here just to have fun. We want them to have fun, but we also want them to understand all the thrill of getting to know wildlife.
And that's what makes Busch Gardens such a special place. It's a window to the wonders of the wild, where the closer you look, the more you'll find to see. When Busch Gardens first opened its doors in 1959, visitors enjoyed a 16-acre park devoted entirely to birds and flowers. In the years since, the park has grown in size and stature. The event that symbolized just how important a zoo Busch Gardens has become was its selection by the Chinese government as a temporary home for Ling Ling and Yong Yong, two rare giant pandas. To accommodate these honored guests, the park designed and built a customized enclosure, complete with air conditioning, running water, bamboo foliage, and a people mover for the steady stream of visitors who came to share in the big event. All in all, today's Busch Gardens covers more than 300 acres and is home to more than 3,000 mammals, reptiles, and birds. Because there is so much to see, the park has 3 different ways visitors can get the lay of the land, over, around, and through it all. Over on the high-flying sky ride. Around on one of the Transvelt Railway's old-fashioned steam engine trains.
Award for this accomplishment. These antelope are still very rare, and you are viewing one of the largest collections in captivity.
And through the heart of one of the largest animal habitats in any zoo, on the sleek Busch Gardens monorail, as it glides across the magnificent Serengeti Plain.
The Serengeti Plain is a fantastic place. 70 acres of wide open spaces for the animals. We have some 28 species of animals out here, and there's 478 individual animals.
David Seeger is one of the keepers who keep track of all the residents of this home on the range. Louis Barossa also works out on the Serengeti and in Busch Gardens' well-equipped zoo kitchen, where every morning the massive job of feeding the park's huge population begins.
We come in the mornings preparing all the food for all the animals, and as the day progresses, all this will be used. It's a good 7.5 hours of making food and getting it all set up, and then the feed truck will start coming in and picking up all their food.
Good morning, Lou. You got everything ready for Serengeti?
Everything's ready. Take it away.
Thank you. We get up in the morning and move about 2,500 pounds of grain and some 60 bales of hay, and we do all this off the back of a moving truck. We get to see the little babies when they're born, and we help the veterinary with them when they're sick or injured. We don't fence our animals in, we fence the people out, and the animals are allowed to run free as their will chooses to eat and breed and have fun, and whatever animals do, eat and sleep just as they please.
In addition to the Serengeti Plain, Busch Gardens has a number of other habitats that reflect the latest scientific discoveries about the needs of wildlife creatures in captivity. A far cry from what visitors to an earlier generation of zoos encountered.
Years ago, a visitor could walk right up to a cage and look through bars and see an animal in a small little cell-like structure. Now we discover that the animal is most important, so we've tried to create a preserve or display that looks much like you'd find in the wild, so he can behave like you would in the wild. Our tiger display is a good display both for the animal and the viewer. View the tigers from an elevated walkway so that when you look down at the animals, you see their island, you see the waterfall, you see the water, but you don't see other people because you're not looking across the display, you're looking down into it. And from the tiger's point of view, he's not looking up at you, he's looking straight across at other tigers. He doesn't see you, but you see him.
And what you do see are Bengal tigers, originally found only in India. Today, they too are endangered. Like Claw Island, Busch Gardens' state-of-the-art elephant habitat is designed to please park visitors and residents.
We have a large display of over an acre. They've got plenty of room to roam. They've got water to play in. They've got a waterfall to get in when they want to cool off a little bit. They've got some rock work and some trees to get them out of the sun and provide a little bit of privacy.
Even though privacy is important to these beasts, they obviously enjoy being close to people, as much as people enjoy getting close to them. Here at the Elephant Wash, bath time is also playtime for visitors and elephants alike. Roman Schmidt followed in his father's footsteps when he became a professional elephant breeder more than 20 years ago. Now he houses his breeding herd here in the spectacular Busch Gardens Elephant Compound.
As far as the display is concerned, it's fabulous. Not only for the public to view these endangered species, but for the elephants themselves. They have 100% total freedom, which makes a happier elephant, which makes the breeding a lot easier, safer. It's just a very good environment. The main reason why I'm here and why my elephants are here is to save the Asian elephant from extinction. Even though they're the most loved animal there is, most people don't know that much about them. We're trying to educate the public and trying to save them because they are very, very endangered and they're threatened with extinction.
In the wild, destruction of habitats and illegal poaching are making it harder than ever for these magnificent animals to lead normal lives. It's important, then, for them to be able to breed in captivity. Yet captive breeding is the ultimate challenge in a zoo, since it requires that the animals feel completely at home in a man-made environment.
The mortality rate for captive bred elephants is very, very bad for some unknown reason. We don't know yet if it's because of the institutions or it's just captivity, but we've had the most success of any private breeding program anywhere in the world.
These youngsters are only two of more than 1,000 critters born or hatched annually here at Busch Gardens. But of them all, this not-so-little baby may represent one of the most remarkable captive breeding success stories in recent history. It's so special that, to minimize any risk, it was raised in its own enclosure, away from people, except for the watchful eyes of concerned staff members, such as Zoo Director Gerald Lentz.
In order for animals to survive long-term, they need to have different animals that are inputting genes into their society. In other words, different breeding animals must come together in nature and as well as in zoos. A few years ago, we decided that we needed some new giraffe for our exhibit here at Busch Gardens. We knew, and all the zoos knew in this country, that there had been like over 20 years since any major numbers of reticulated giraffe have even been imported into the United States. So this was a very major importation from that because the opportunity for importing giraffe is very, very limited. The capture program was one of the most exciting things I've ever been involved in. It's kind of the ultimate field trip, if you will.
This field trip involved an expedition to the Kenyan wilderness. There, Busch Gardens zoological experts carefully selected and captured the animals so sorely needed across the Atlantic. It was also incredibly successful. After a few months in quarantine, 17 young, healthy, reticulated giraffes, named for the reticulated or web-like patterns on their coat, made a new home for themselves on Busch Gardens' Serengeti Plains. After that, it was wait and hope the giraffes would feel comfortable enough to settle in and raise a family.
This new baby represents the newest, or the first addition, if you will, to these animals. She was born almost, 4 years to the month from the time we actually started capturing.
Actually, this baby is good news for all reticulated giraffe. Even though they're not yet officially endangered, their numbers are diminishing in their Kenyan wilderness homeland.
We were able to go into Africa and actually capture these animals before they reached the point of being extremely endangered and depleted and diminished. The giraffe, to me, is a magnificent animal. I think that when you see it in a zoo or in captivity, it stops you and makes you look at it because it is big, it's strange, it's interesting. Giraffe are basically good-natured animals. They basically don't bother too much of anything. They're curious. They're just fascinating animals.
In a very real sense, all wildlife is fascinating. But in a world where thousands of acres of wilderness are being lost every day, an alarming number of species face an uncertain future. For example, these beautiful Grevy zebras, named after one-time French President Jules Grevy, were once abundant on the African plains of Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. Now, with their natural habitat disappearing, their main breeding grounds are zoos. Here at Busch Gardens, you'll find one of the largest and most productive herds of Grevies in the world, which makes these creatures both irresistible and irreplaceable. Wild creatures are understandably protective of their young, and seeing baby animals up close is a rare event. Except here at the Nairobi Field Station, the animal nursery at Busch Gardens, modeled after an authentic turn-of-the-century African field hospital. The nursery has windows all around, so visitors can see everything that goes on inside.
How are you? I got your bottle. It's for you.
Babies are important to the park's wildlife conservation work, so this facility has been equipped with everything that animal attendant Debbie Bond and her colleagues need to keep an amazing range of youngsters healthy and growing.
We have a range of animals that can be from those little birds that hatch that weigh only a few grams to a large variety of hoof stock, as well as primates that come through the nursery. What I'm feeding right now is a baby Cape buffalo. This little buffalo is only 9 weeks old, if you can believe that. When she was born, she was about 115 pounds, and she's probably about twice that size right now.
And with enough tender loving care, this is what growing up will mean to that same Cape buffalo, reaching an adult weight of up to 1,800 pounds. Obviously, being a surrogate parent can be a big job.
We believe that the animals should remain with their mothers if everything's fine, but a lot of times it just doesn't work out that way. Sometimes a mother has a problem. There's a medical difficulty with the mother or the baby that would warrant the baby coming into the nursery. Sometimes for reasons that we're not sure of and we don't really fully understand yet, animal mothers in zoos refuse to take care of their young, so the nursery would be the next stop for them. You get the same kind of medical attention that any human baby would get.
Veterinarian Dr. John Olson oversees the park's incredible variety of medical needs, including many scientists are still discovering.
As a zoo veterinarian, you're often considered a specialist, but in my mind, a zoo veterinarian is actually a very extreme generalist as far as medicine goes. I have to deal with fish, reptiles, birds, elephants, marine mammals, a whole gamut of sizes of animals and metabolic systems. That's one of the thrills of it, but it's also a frustration in that there's so little known about many of these species. We don't have the normal values, whether it be blood or heart rate or many, many factors that have not been established yet on the exotic species.
To help keep the zoo's population as well as possible and learn more about the mysteries of animal health care, Busch Gardens has a fully equipped hospital, as well as support from the people who work with the animals day in and day out.
It's impossible with a collection of our size to get out and see every animal on a daily basis or even a weekly basis as a staff veterinarian. I rely on the keepers and attendants who deal with them daily, who are out there feeding them, to notice if there's a problem.
For birds of prey, there's another source of support that extends all the way from Missouri. There, the Anheuser-Busch Company supports an organization called the Raptor Rehabilitation and Propagation Project, Incorporated, that helps injured birds of prey, or raptors, regain their flying abilities. Here at Busch Gardens, the center helps provide a special chance for visitors to see and learn about these magnificent creatures and their remarkable abilities.
Many of the raptors that we have in the show are very young birds. They were raised in the Raptor Project. So actually, they're still learning how to do a lot of things.
It does not have any feathers on it.
Lisa Harris helps train and rehearse the cast of the spectacular Busch Gardens Bird Show.
We spent a great deal of time establishing a relationship based on trust and affection. First of all, we established the fact that they are fed on a glove, which is on the handler's hand. The bird is then placed, say, on a perch and asked to step onto the glove to receive his food. Then we'll back up the perch a few more inches to where he actually has to jump onto the glove to receive the food. Back it up to where he has to flap his wings to reach that glove. We're doing the same thing, in fact, that the adult birds will be doing in the wild, teaching the youngsters how to fly.
On your marks, get set, and go!
The Bird Show teaches more than the birds involved. Like the other animal shows at Busch Gardens, it also teaches people in the audience a never-to-be-forgotten lesson about the wonders of animal behavior.
I would hope in watching Bo and I work together, they can see that Bo is an individual. Chimpanzees are very social animal, and they do develop individual relationships. They used to think that brute force was what established the head of the troop, but it's not. It's friendship, relationships. Animals will gang together, if you will, to become buddies and keep other intruders out of the group. So it is very important in their development, and also an important part of their life in general. In watching us do a lot of things together, they can see that we communicate on a lot of different levels. And I would hope that by that they could tell that even though Bo and I do look completely different, we do have a lot in common. He is my friend.
So see how he's doing it right now? It's called preening. That's cleaning.
Anybody with a question will find plenty of friends at Busch Gardens. That's because more and more, the theme of this theme park is getting people in closer touch with the often fragile wonders of nature.
We're out here to talk to the guests, to answer questions. There are over 3,000 animals here at the gardens, and they're incredibly interesting, and people come up with great questions. We're here to answer those questions.
The whole Busch Gardens staff is trained at making information easy to find and fun to find out. A measure of the park's commitment to public education are the portable question and answer carts you'll bump into here.
First we give them the manicure and the pedicure, then we rub them
Ever
down.
wanted a bird's eye view of things? Margot McKnight and the Wings on Wheels cart are here to satisfy your urge to know.
With each person, we probably get 5 or 6 questions. So we're answering questions quite a while.
See that hole on this one? We just make a little hole and then empty all the contents out. It's liquid, just like...
The park is finding more and more ways to help guests learn more about the wonders of nature. Of course, sometimes the questions are just as interesting as the answers.
Most interesting question I've ever heard is this a panda egg? The answer was no.
At Busch Gardens, you'll find that facts aren't just part of the fun. Public information is one of the park's most important goals. After all, the more you know about the wonders here, the more you're likely to care about them, here and in their worldwide struggle for survival. We've gone from overviews to close-up looking, seeing, touching, and asking. But if you get the feeling we haven't quite covered it all, well, that's just another familiar feeling after a day at Busch Gardens. There's always something else enticing you to stay a little longer.
You can't see everything in a day's time.
I like the white tiger.
I like the elephant.
I like the monkey.
Elephant. It's actually more educational than what we thought it would be.
We just had a wonderful time all day.
This is my second time here. I definitely come back.
The main reason people enjoy coming back to zoos like Busch Gardens again and again is that some of the most important animals here are people. Pleasing people is part of the job at every modern zoo, since people who've enjoyed seeing nature's wonders are more likely to take home an increased appreciation of them, and hopefully add to the ranks of those who care about preserving our natural heritage the world over. So come and enjoy it all. The animals, the rides, the restaurants, flowers, sights, sounds, songs, and everything else that's here, awaiting you and your return.